Today, I give Obiala its future.
By order of the High Court, you will declare nothing.
Sometimes, my people, the proudest man in the room is the one standing closest to his own downfall. What is taken by force is only borrowed, and truth, though it sleeps for 20 years, never dies. That frozen man is Chief Ozioma, the richest man in Obiala, the governor at his table, every camera in the state on his face. And the blind beggar in rags beside the lawyer. For 19 years, that old man had sat in the dust at this chief's golden gate. The guards spat near his feet. The chief himself once flung a coin into the mud and laughed as the old man's trembling fingers searched for it. They all thought he was begging. He was not begging, my people. He was waiting. How does a man in rags bring down a man who owns half a town? To tell you, I must take you back 20 years to a stolen thumbprint, a fire in the night, and a little girl who vanished before dawn. Stay with me to the end and subscribe to the channel, because this story will show you that what is stolen by force is always paid back. To understand this story, we must go back 20 years. Back then, Obiala was a small farming town, and the largest land in it, 40 hectares of rich black soil stretching from the river to the Iroko trees, belonged to one man, Elder Nnamdi Okafor. Nnamdi was not born rich. He had cleared that land with his own hands as a young man, tree by tree, stone by stone. His palms were maps of scars. His back was bent from years of work. But his heart was soft as new yam. Every harvest, Nnamdi filled baskets and left them at the doors of widows before sunrise, so they would never feel the shame of asking. When the school roof collapsed, it was Nnamdi who paid for the new one, and he begged the headmaster to tell no one. He had one son, Emeka, who worked beside him, one daughter-in-law, Ngozi, gentle as morning rain, and one granddaughter, little Amara, 6 years old, with laughter that could wake a sleeping farm. Nnamdi used to carry her on his shoulders through the cassava rows and tell her, "Amara, this land is not mine. I am only keeping it for you." Remember those words, my people. Heaven recorded them. In that same town lived a young man named Ozioma, sharp-eyed, quick-tongued, hungry, not in his stomach, but in his soul. Ozioma worked as a clerk in the local land registry, stamping papers for men greater than himself, and every stamp fell like an insult on his pride. Why should Nnamdi, an old man who could not even read, own 40 hectares, while Ozioma, who could read 3 languages, owned nothing but a bicycle? Envy, my people, is a seed. Water it, and it grows into a tree whose fruit is wickedness. Ozioma watered it every single day. He watched the Okafor farm from the road. He studied the land files at night by candlelight. And slowly, patiently, he began to draw a plan, the way a spider draws a web. He befriended Elder Nnamdi. Oh, how he bowed, how he smiled. He carried the old man's baskets. He read letters aloud for him. He called him Papa. And Nnamdi, whose heart had no room for suspicion, opened his door to him and said, "This boy is like a second son to me." My people, be careful. Not everyone who calls you father wants to be your child. It began with a paper. One evening, Ozioma came to Nnamdi's house with documents and a face full of concern. "Papa," he said, "the government is registering all lands. If your farm is not properly documented, strangers can claim it. Sign here and I will register it in your name, you and little Amara, just as you always wanted." Nnamdi could not read, but he could trust. And that evening, trust picked up the pen for him. He pressed his thumb into the ink. He pressed it onto the paper, and he thanked Ozioma with a blessing. May God lift you high, my son. God heard that blessing, but so did heaven's bookkeeper, because the paper under Nnamdi's thumb was not a registration. It was a transfer of ownership. Every hectare, every tree, every grain of that black soil, signed over to Ozioma. The old man had just given away his granddaughter's inheritance with his own hand, and he walked back into his house smiling. Sometimes I ask myself which wound is deeper, the one made by a machete or the one made by a pen. The machete, at least, you feel at once. But Ozioma had a problem. A thumbprint is one thing, the town's memory is another. Everyone in Obiala knew whose land that was, and Nnamdi's son, Emeka, could read. It was Emeka who, one market day, went to the land registry to see this registration his father kept thanking Ozioma for. And there, in the great ledger, he saw it with his own eyes. Not a registration at all, but a sale, 40 hectares, signed over to Ozioma. Emeka did 3 things that day, and each one lit a fuse. He confronted Ozioma at the registry in front of a clerk. He demanded, loudly, a certified copy of the entry. And that evening, he told his father everything. So that same night, by lamplight, Nnamdi and Emeka wrapped the original title, the survey maps, the tax receipts, and the witnessed deed the old man had long ago made for Amara, and carried them to the one person in Obiala too holy to rob, Father Michael, the parish priest. Keep these, Emeka told him. Tomorrow I report Ozioma to the district officer. Tomorrow never came. Ozioma, learning that a certified copy had been requested and a report was coming, knew that by morning his whole plan would burn. So he made the Okafors burn first. I will not dwell on that night, my people, because some wickedness should not be described in detail. I will only tell you what the town saw. Flames rising from the Okafor compound at midnight, taller than the Iroko trees. Emeka did not come out. Ngozi did not come out. Elder Nnamdi came out, carried by neighbors, alive, but changed forever. The smoke had entered his eyes. Within 1 month, the world went grey. Within 3, it went dark. The old man who had cleared 40 hectares tree by tree would never see a tree again. And little Amara? In the confusion, a neighbor, Mama Ada, snatched the sleeping child from her bed and ran. With killers about and the compound burning, she pressed the baby into the arms of her own younger sister, Chindwe, who was fleeing that very night on the last lorry to the far city. Take care where they cannot reach, she said. But Chinwe fell sick on that hard road and died within the year in a city of 1 million strangers, leaving the child with a household that had taken them in, who knew only that her name was Amara and that she came from somewhere near Obiala. And so the trail went cold from both ends. Mama Ada never learned the city never learned Obiala. The town mourned, the town wept, and the town, as towns do, slowly moved on. 1 year later, Ozioma presented his paper. Elder Nnamdi sold me the land before the fire, he announced. See, his thumbprint, properly registered, properly stamped. And who had done the stamping? Ozioma himself in the registry where he worked. The perfect crime, sealed by the criminal's own hand. Now hear me, my people, because I know the question already in your mouth. It was the same question in every mouth in Obiala that morning. Who would believe it? A clerk with nothing but a bicycle, buying 40 hectares from elder Nnamdi, a man who would have sold his own 2 hands before he sold that soil? Nobody believed it. Not one living soul. The market women spat. The young men wanted to burn Ozioma the way his fire had burned the Okafors. And the blind old man stood in the square and cried, "I signed nothing. I was deceived." And every heart there knew he spoke the truth. But learn how the world truly works, my children. Belief is not power. Ozioma did not need the town to believe him. He needed only the paper, and the paper was registered. The one man who could read the fraud, Emeka, was in his grave. The man who lived it, Nnamdi, was blind, and the blind pauper crying robbery in the market is called mad by dinner time. And the money, you ask? The money to build, to bribe, to rise. The stolen land itself was the money. 40 hectares of the richest black soil in the region is not a farm, my people. It is a fortune lying in the ground. Its harvest made him rich. Its timber made him richer. And big men in the city, men who had long hungered for a foothold in Obiala's soil, were only too glad to bankroll the clever clerk who could make land change hands with a single stamp. They fed him money and muscle. He became their hand in the town. So, coin by coin, Ozioma bought the one thing that truth could not defeat: the lone local lawyer, the district officer, the constable's silence, the elder's tired shrug. He bought the very machinery that should have judged him. That, my people, is why a whole town that never believed him for one moment still could not lay a finger on him. On Nnamdi's own land, he raised a mansion of white pillars and golden gates and bought titles the way other men buy bread, until Obiala was forced to bow its head and call him Chief Ozioma, owner of half the town. He married a proud beauty named Lolo Priscilla, who wore a new girl every day and had never once cooked a pot of soup. And the blind man was left with nothing but a wooden staff, a begging bowl, and a memory that refused to die. Now here is the part of the story that made even me pause when I first heard it. Nnamdi could have begged anywhere. The market, the church gate, the motor park, where travelers give freely. Instead, every single morning for 19 years, the blind man tapped his way through town and sat at one place only, the golden gate of Chief Ozioma's mansion, his land, the soil he had cleared with his own scarred hands. People called him mad. Children called him the statue. The chief's guards pushed him, mocked him, poured dirty water where he sat. And still, every morning, tap, 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 and the old man would settle at the gate like a debt that refuses to be forgotten. When people asked him, "Papa, why here? Why do you sit at the gate of the man who ruined you?" the blind man would smile a small, patient smile and give the same answer, always the same answer. A landlord should stay close to his land. They laughed at him, my people. Heaven did not laugh. Heaven was taking notes. Let me show you Chief Ozioma at the height of his power, so you understand what pride looks like just before it falls. His mansion had 30 rooms. He slept in a different one each night because he trusted no one. A thief always believes he is surrounded by thieves. His cars were washed twice a day. His party shook the town till morning. Politicians ate at his table. Even the police commissioner called him my chairman. And yet, listen closely, Chief Ozioma did not sleep well. Every window of that mansion faced something he could not remove. A blind old man at his gate, still as a tree stump, patient as the grave. He could have had him carried away, and twice he did. But the first time his guards beat the old man, the market women wailed, the catechist preached on it, and the elders began, once more, to murmur about the fire and the land. Ozioma was clever enough to understand the lesson. A dead beggar becomes a martyr, and a martyr's questions do not sleep. A mad old man that everyone dismissed was far safer than a corpse that made the whole town remember, so he let him sit. "Why does that wretch disturb my gate?" the chief would snap. But he never once ordered the man truly harmed. And do you know why beneath the cleverness? Fear, my people. The small, cold fear that lives in every wicked heart. The fear that the past is not dead, only sleeping. Guilt is a strange tenant. It pays no rent, but it never leaves. Now leave Obiala for a moment and come with me to the city. The child who vanished on the night of the fire did not vanish from God's sight. She was raised by the family that had taken in the dying Chinwe, the Nwosus, poor people but honest ones. And she grew up as Amara Nwosu, washing plates before school and reading borrowed books under street lights. They could not tell her where she came from because they did not know. Chinwe had died with the secret in her chest. All that outlived her was a first name and 6 words. Her people are from near Obiala. No papers, no town, no family name, a cold trail, and no small girl has time to walk a cold trail. Amara herself remembered almost nothing. Only fragments, like pieces of a broken pot. A farm that went on forever, riding on shoulders through cassava rows. A scratchy old voice saying, "This land is not mine, I am only keeping it for you." And fire, she always remembered fire. But Amara had one gift, her head. She took first position in every class she ever sat in. Teachers fought to sponsor her. She won a scholarship to study law. And my people, she did not just study law, she swallowed it. While her mates followed money into oil companies, Amara joined a small legal aid charity that fought land cases for the poor. When they asked her why, she said something she did not fully understand herself. "Somewhere, someone took something from my family. I feel it. Since I cannot find that person, I will fight for everyone." Look at that, my people. The seed Nnamdi planted in a 6-year-old's ears had survived the fire. Blood may forget a face. It never forgets a promise. It was an ordinary Tuesday when the file landed on Amara's desk. Her charity had received a petition from a group of farmers in a town called Obiala. Their farmland was being seized by a powerful chief for a new estate project. Documents attached, travel approved. Obiala. The name touched something at the bottom of her memory, the way a stone dropped in a well touches water you cannot see. She turned the file over. She read the chief's name, Chief Ozioma Ude. Nothing, no memory at all. But that night, for the first time in years, Amara dreamed of cassava rows and a scratchy voice and shoulders carrying her toward the sun. She woke before dawn, packed one small bag, and set out for a town she did not know was hers. My people, do you see how heaven works? It does not rush. It does not shout. It simply arranges. 20 years of arranging. And now the last piece was traveling home by morning bus. Amara arrived in Obiala at midday. And the strangest thing happened as the bus rolled past the river. Her chest tightened. Her eyes filled with tears she could not explain. The Iroko trees on the horizon looked like old relatives waving. Have I been here before? She whispered. The farmers received her like rain in dry season. For 3 days, she gathered their documents, walked their boundaries, photographed the bulldozers already parked like patient vultures at the edge of the fields. And everywhere she went, she heard one name spoken in the same low, careful voice. The voice people use for things they fear. The chief. The chief owns the police. The chief owns the courts. The chief owns the land registry. My daughter, be careful. The chief owns Obiala. On the 4th day, Amara went to see this chief for herself. She stood across the road from the white mansion, studying the golden gates, the high walls, the guards, and then her eyes fell on something small at the foot of all that grandeur. A blind old beggar, sitting in the dust, still as a tree stump. And Amara's heart, listen to me, my people. Her heart turned over in her chest like a canoe in a storm. She did not know why. The blood knew. The blood always knows. Amara crossed the road. She knelt beside the old man, this city lawyer in her clean suit, kneeling in roadside dust, and placed money in his bowl. Not thrown, placed. The old man's head lifted. Your hand is gentle, he said. In 19 years, only children place, everyone else throws. 19 years, Papa. You have sat at this gate for 19 years. A landlord, said the old man, should stay close to his land. Amara smiled at what she thought was an old man's joke. She asked his name, and the answer fell into the quiet street like thunder from a clear sky. Nnamdi Okafor. Somewhere deep inside Amara, a door that had been locked for 20 years opened 1 inch. That name. She had heard that name, not in a file, not in a book, in the kitchen, in a lullaby, in another life. Her voice came out as a whisper. Papa Nnamdi, did you ever have a granddaughter? The old blind man went completely still. Then his hands began to tremble. First the fingers, then the arms, then the begging bowl rattling in his lap like a frightened bird. Who is asking? He breathed. In the name of God. Who is asking? My name is Amara. My people. 19 years of sitting, 19 years of mockery, 19 years of tap, tap, tap through the dust of Obiala. And the old man lifted his blind eyes to heaven and said 5 words. You kept her for me. He reached out his scarred hands and touched her face the way a blind man reads. The brow, the nose, the chin. And he wept without sound, the tears running into the valleys of his cheeks. And he said, you have your mother's chin. You have my Emeka's brow. Amara, Amara, seed of my seed. I am the one who was keeping the land for you. They talked until the sun went down, the beggar and the lawyer, the grandfather and the granddaughter, sitting together in the dust outside the golden gate of everything that had been stolen from them. He told her all of it, the kindness shown to a hungry young clerk, the paper and the thumbprint, Emeka's discovery at the registry, and the certified copy he never lived to collect, the fire, her father, Emeka, her mother, Ngozi, the smoke that ate his eyes, and the case that died because a poor man's word weighs less than a rich man's paper. Amara listened the way lawyers listen, but she wept the way orphans weep. Papa, she asked at last, the night of the fire, my father took something to a priest. Does it still exist? And the blind man smiled, the same small, patient smile the town had mocked for 19 years. Child, the evening Emeka uncovered the theft, we did not wait for morning. We carried everything to Father Michael, the title, the maps, the receipts, and the deed I made years before. witnessed and sealed, giving that land to your father and to you. Ozioma burned my house down around my eyes. He never knew the papers had already left it. And Father Michael kept them all this time. 20 years. He hid me too. A small room behind the sacristy, and the market women fed me from their pots. Or I would not be breathing to tell you this. He is old now, but what he guards beneath that altar has been waiting for you since before you could read. My people, do you see? The wicked plan for years, but heaven plans for generations. Father Michael was old and silver-haired now, but when Amara spoke the name Nnamdi Okafor, he rose from his chair like a young man. 20 years, he said, unlocking the vestry with shaking hands. But do not think I sat idle, child. In the beginning, I took certified copies to the district officer myself. The case was thrown out in a week. The copies vanished from the file, and a man I did not know stopped me on the church road one night and said it would be a pity if the church were to catch fire the way the Okafor house did. He lifted an oilcloth bundle onto the table and blew off the dust of 2 decades. So I stopped shouting. I hid the originals here, and I sent a second sealed set to the diocesan archive in the city, where his hand could not reach. And then I waited. Not for a man with working eyes, Amara. I waited for a lawyer he did not own. He untied the cloth. Everything was there. The original land title in Nnamdi's name, survey maps older than Ozioma's paper, 30 years of tax receipts, each one a witness that could not be bribed, and a deed of gift properly drawn, thumb-printed by Nnamdi and signed before 3 witnesses years before the fire, placing the 40 hectares in trust for Emeka and for Amara. Amara stood over that table and understood for the first time her whole life why she had studied law, why she had refused the oil companies, why that file had found her desk. 20 years of questions answered by one box beneath an altar. But she did not simply photograph it and shout, as the young priest once had. She did it the lawyer's way. She obtained certified true copies from the registry and from the diocesan archive, took sworn statements, and filed every page as an exhibit before a court, so that this time nothing could quietly disappear. And then she did what her grandfather had done for 19 years. She became patient. Because Amara knew the law, my people, and the law is a trap for a leopard. You do not spring it while the leopard is watching. For 2 months, Amara worked in silence, and she worked under the only name Obiala knew her by, Amara Nwosu, a young legal aid lawyer, one more idealist filing paper for poor farmers. That cover was a wall, and she built behind it. By day, she filed routine objections to the estate, nothing to alarm a man who had crushed better lawyers before breakfast. By night, she built the real case, stone by stone, the way her grandfather had once cleared land tree by tree. And she did not build it at the gate, in Ozioma's sight. She built it in Father Michael's back room, where no balcony could see. She found the retired registrar who had always hated what he had been made to do. He swore in writing that Ozioma's entry had been forced into the ledger between 2 older ones in a hand no registrar had ever countersigned, and dated to a week the registry had stood locked for the Easter holiday. She found the old constable who never believed the fire was an accident, whose report had vanished from the file, but who, God bless his stubborn heart, had kept his own handwritten copy in a biscuit tin. She found the mason, one of the 3 men who had stacked firewood against the Okafor house that night. He wept when she found him, but he would not sign. "You do not know that man," he whispered. "He is still Ozioma. I have children." She did not force him. She left her card and said only, "When you are ready to put it down, I will be here." And she found someone she was not looking for, Mama Ada, the very neighbor who had pulled her from the fire and pressed her into Chinwe's arms on the lorry. Grey and bent now, 2 streets from the church. The old woman took one look at Amara's face and collapsed in tears. "Emeka's brow," she kept saying. "Ngozi's chin. I told them the child would come back. Nobody believed me." Her eyewitness word, joined to Father Michael's own baptismal register, Amara Okafor baptized, Mama Ada standing as godmother, and in time, to the grandfather's own blood, would close the circle no court could argue with. Witness by witness, paper by paper, the trap took shape. Only once in those 2 months did she let herself sit beside him at the gate. The evening before the ceremony, the beggar and the lawyer side by side in the dust, saying almost nothing at all. And Ozioma, glancing down from his balcony, saw only a tired charity girl comforting his tame madman, and felt nothing. Wickedness has sharp eyes, my people, but it always looks in the wrong direction. And on the last day, quietly, in a courtroom 2 towns away, where the chief's money had no friends, Amara stood before a high court judge and asked for 3 things, and got them. Now Chief Ozioma, knowing nothing, prepared the greatest day of his life. The grand unveiling of the Obiala royal estate, 500 plots carved from the farmers' fields, and, at the center, from the 40 hectares of black soil where it had all begun. The governor himself was coming, television cameras, traditional rulers from 6 towns, a canopy of gold and white, built, listen to this my people, built on the exact spot where the Okafor farmhouse once stood before the fire. The wicked, my people, always dance on the graves of their sins. It is not courage, it is blindness, the true blindness, the kind that no smoke causes and no doctor cures. The night before the ceremony, Lolo Priscilla found her husband on the balcony, staring down at the gates. The beggar was gone. He always left at sunset. But the chief was staring at the place where he sat, at the smooth patch of ground worn into the dust by 19 years of one man's patience. "Come inside," she said. "Tomorrow you become the greatest man this town has ever seen." Chief Ozioma nodded slowly. "Then why," he said quietly, "do I feel like a man standing on a bridge listening to it crack?" Even the wicked hear the warning, my people. They just never leave the bridge in time. The morning of the ceremony, Obiala had never seen such glory. Canopies like white clouds, drummers in red, the governor's convoy raising dust for a mile. Chief Ozioma in robes of gold thread, his cap heavy with red coral, rising to speak into a forest of microphones. "My people, 20 years ago, I bought this land with my sweat. Today, I give Obiala a future. I hereby declare the Obiala Royal Estate. By order of the High Court, you will declare nothing." A woman's voice, clear as a church bell. The crowd turned. Cameras turned. The governor turned. And down the center aisle walked a young lawyer in black and white, a leather file under her arm and a court bailiff at her shoulder. And beside her, led gently by the hand, tapping his stick, in rags that stood out against all that gold, like truth in a den of lies. came the blind beggar from the gate. The murmur that went through that crowd sounded like wind before rain. The guards moved forward, but the bailiff raised the sealed document, and the governor, curious, lifted one hand, and the whole world stopped. "Who are you, young woman?" "My name is Barrister Amara, Your Excellency. But I was born Amara Okafor, granddaughter of Elder Nnamdi Okafor, the true and documented owner of the very ground your chair is standing on." She opened the file. "And I hold here an interim injunction of the High Court, served this moment upon Chief Ozioma and upon the state. No sale, no excavation, no transfer of this land may proceed, and every record in the Obiala registry is preserved by order, pending investigation. This ceremony is over. I am here, before these cameras and before God, to take back the theft of my family's inheritance by law." Chief Ozioma's face, my people. I wish I could paint it for you. It was the face of a man who has slept in 30 rooms for 20 years and finally met the thing he was hiding from. At his own podium, wearing his stolen land like a garment in front of every camera in the state. "Lies!" he roared, but his voice cracked in the middle and everyone heard it. "I bought this land. I have documents." "You have a document," said Amara, and she did not shout. "Wickedness shouts, my people. Truth just speaks. Let us read it together before the governor." It claims a sale, yet shows no payment, no receipt, no bank, not one kobo for 40 hectares. It bears 2 witnesses. One of them died 2 years before the date he supposedly signed. The other never learned to hold a pen. It carries a registration number the registry did not issue until 7 months after the date stamped upon it. It claims to have been registered on a day the registry stood locked for Easter, and in the Great Ledger, the entry sits crammed between 2 older ones. In a hand, the registrar of that year swears he never wrote and never countersigned. The same registrar who will testify that a clerk named Ozioma forced it in. She lifted a page with each sentence, like a woman dealing judgment from a deck of cards. "Against your one poisoned paper, I set my grandfather's original title, 12 years older, 30 years of tax receipts in his name, the constable's true report on the fire that killed my father and my mother, and this, a deed of gift, drawn and witnessed years before that fire, placing this land in trust for me, sealed in the church and copied in the diocese your money could never reach." Silence. Total silence. Even the drummer's hands hung in the air. Then the old blind man stepped forward, tapped his stick once on the ground, his ground, and spoke for the first time in that assembly, in a voice cracked by 20 years of dust. "Ozioma, my son called you brother. I called you son. You took my land with a pen, my family with a fire, and my eyes with the smoke. I have sat at your gate for 19 years. So that God would know where to find us both. He has found us today." What happened next, Obiala still talks about. The governor, with every camera in the state upon him, and the sealed High Court order in the bailiff's hand, had no choice, and perhaps, to his credit, no desire for one. He ordered the estate frozen on the spot, the registry sealed on the guard, and a full investigation opened that very hour. But it was not the governor who broke the chief. It was the small things, my people, the way it always is. As the guards drew close, a man shoved out of the crowd, the mason, the one who would not sign. He had just watched a blind old man he had wronged stand and name his sins to a chief's face. and something buried in him for 20 years clawed its way into the light. I stacked the wood, he cried, weeping. Ozioma paid me and 2 others to pile it against the Okafor house that night. I have carried it like a stone. I cannot carry it one more day. The crowd parted around him like water. It did not all fall in a single night. The truth is not a magic trick, my people. It is a harvest. Over the weeks that followed, the other 2 masons confessed. A document examiner from the city studied the deed and the ledger. The retired registrar testified to the forced entry. The very clerk who had been ordered to squeeze it into the book named the man who ordered him. And the sealed diocesan copy was opened and matched, page for page, the originals beneath the altar. And the big men in the city, who had used his hands for 20 years, they melted back into their offices the moment the cameras turned, and left him to stand alone, as such men always do. Chief Ozioma was arrested first for the fraud caught red-handed under his own gold canopy, the injunction broken, the forged registration laid bare, and then, as the masons spoke and the file grew thick, for the murder of Emeka and Nnamdi Okafor, they led him out past the gate where the beggar had sat. They say he looked at that smooth patch of dust as he passed. They say he understood at last what the old man had been doing there for 19 years. Not begging, witnessing. The trials took 2 years, as such trials do. I will give you only the harvest. The court declared Ozioma's transfer void, procured by fraud, registered by forgery, and restored the 40 hectares, with the very mansion built upon them, to their living owner, Elder Nnamdi Okafor. For a house raised in bad faith on another man's soil belongs, in the end, to the soil's true owner. And Nnamdi, old, blind, and in no need of 30 rooms, did what he had promised a 6-year-old on his shoulders long ago. He placed the whole of it in a family trust and made Amara its trustee, to hold and use for the good of Obiala. For the fire, for Emeka and for Ngozi, who had waited 20 years in their graves for this day, Ozioma and the men he paid were convicted of murder. He will spend the rest of his life owning nothing, not even the hours of his own day. And the farmers, whose petition had begun it all, their fields had never been Ozioma's to take. His entire estate had rested on a single lie, that their land formed part of the original 40 hectares. When that lie fell, the whole estate fell with it. Amara filed each family's title beside her grandfather's, and one by one the boundaries were restored. The bulldozers left Obiala the way vultures leave when the thing they were circling stands up alive. As for Lolo Priscilla, the court found no proof she had known of the fire or the forgery. A woman who enjoys stolen comfort is always careful never to ask where it comes from. She was not chained, but the wealth simply ended, and the town's greetings ended with it, and she went back to her people by night bus to a small and ordinary life. The square was full the day the judgment was read. In the front row sat an old blind man, very straight, very still, his scarred hands folded on his stick. When the judge pronounced the land restored, Nnamdi Okafor did not shout. He simply nodded once, the way a farmer nods at the end of a good harvest. 20 years, my people. Truth is patient. It can be buried. It cannot be killed. Now let me tell you what the granddaughter did with victory, because this is where the story becomes a lesson. Amara did not move into the mansion, a house built on wickedness, she said. should serve goodness or serve no one. She turned those 30 rooms into something Obiala had never had. A school, a free school, with real books and real teachers, and above its gate, in iron letters, the name Emeka and Ngozi Okafor Memorial School. Her parents, who died in fire, now live in the laughter of 600 children. Every morning, that laughter pours over the compound walls. The same walls that once guarded one man's guilt now cannot contain the joy of a whole town's children. The 40 hectares went back to what they were born to be, farmland. Amara divided a portion among the widows and the landless of Obiala, on one condition, written into every agreement, a condition her grandfather insisted upon. Whoever farms this land must give the first basket of every harvest to someone who cannot pay them back. Nnamdi's old kindness planted again in the same black soil. And Father Michael, silver-haired keeper of the box, stood at the school's opening and said only this: I asked God for 20 years when. Now I know why he said, not yet. God was not delaying my people. He was growing the lawyer. There remained one thing to do. On the first morning after the school opened, Amara walked with her grandfather to the Golden Gate, his gate now, and the old man asked her to lead him to the exact spot where he had sat for 19 years. He felt for it with his stick, the smooth patch worn into the earth by 2 decades of patience. He stood there a long moment. Then he said, "Bring me a chair, my daughter, a good chair." They set a fine wooden chair on that very spot, and Nnamdi sat down in it and turned his blind face to the morning sun and laughed, a long, deep laugh that rolled down the street like the first thunder of rainy season. Neighbors came out. The laugh was better than a proclamation. "Papa," Amara asked, "why here? You don't have to sit in the dust anymore. There is a room waiting for you inside the school." And the old man gave his answer. The same answer, my people. The same answer as always. But now the whole town finally understood it. A landlord should stay close to his land. He sat in that chair every morning for the rest of his days, not as a beggar, but as a monument. And every child of the Emeka and Ngozi Memorial School learned to greet him on the way in. "Good morning, landlord." And every morning he answered the same way. "Good morning, my children. Walk well on your land." My people, this story has ended, but its lesson will outlive all of us. Hear it well. What is taken by force is only borrowed. The day of return is already written, even if it is written 20 years away. Ozioma had documents, guards, titles, and the governor at his table. The blind man had truth and time. Look who owns the land tonight. Never mock the patient, because you do not know what they are waiting for. The town saw a mad beggar at a gate. Heaven saw a landlord keeping watch. Be careful of what you sign, and more careful of who calls you Papa with hunger in his eyes. Trust is a door. Do not remove it, but know who you open it for. And to anyone listening tonight who has been robbed of land, of inheritance, of years, of justice, hear this and hold it. The wicked plan for years, but heaven plans for generations. Your Amara may already be on the morning bus. Kindness, patience, and truth. Plant these trees, my people, and no fire can burn your harvest. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who is still waiting for justice. It may be the sign they need to hold on one more day. subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because under this moon, the next tale is already being told. Until then, be kind, be patient, and remember, truth may sleep, but it never dies. Good night, my people. Walk well on your land.